Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. This article comes to you guys from RCR Wireless. I'll leave a link to it in the description so you guys could check it out. So now that AT&T is pushing out 5G, right, controlled introduction, the SA portion of it, they're also going to push towards a cloud native future as well. And we recently got the FCC filing that came straight from AT&T. And yes, we have to acknowledge that AT&T is behind on the mid-band build. They are behind on technology, but they told us they would be modernizing the network at least through 2027. And they told us that at the end of 2024 at the analyst day. Now, I will say AT&T is going to have a a decent network. It's going to have a lot of capacity, but there is going to be things missing and certain spectrum assets that they're not going to be able to fully leverage until they build out more of that mid band. The C band is fine because they didn't get any other additional C band asset. So they're leveraging that today. It's the DoD portion that they're still going to have to build out a ton, and they're still going to have to leverage and fill that capacity. They're still going to have to monetize that. So that's opportunity for AT&T there, right? The cloud native future, the ORAN, the core is going to be built on ORAN. The 5G core is going to be built on ORAN, but they're going to have to go back and modernize more sites. Even in Ericsson markets, existing Ericsson markets today, they're going to have to go back and modernize some of those sites because they don't have everything on those sites, even though those sites have been modernized since the FirstNet rollout, and then a lot of them have gotten the mid band deployments. They're still going to have to go back to some of those markets and deploy the ORAN equipment and likely some other things that are not a part of the network today. So AT&T definitely has its work cut out, but they are behind the competition. Now, that does not mean it's going to derail AT&T's success. It does not mean that all of a sudden their churn is going to increase, but it's going to make it a lot harder for AT&T. There's going to be a lot more competition. T-Mobile is going to push extremely hard against AT&T on business, on broadband, right? Even though fiber could be in any given area, T-Mobile is going to compete against fiber with FWA. They're not going to be able to take the entire neighborhood, for an example, but they're going to be able to take a few customers here and there, and that's going to help T-Mobile continue to grow their finances. But AT&T, again, they have a lot of assets that they can make use, but they're just there's just so much they can't focus on one thing. Like if you're working one job, right, and that job is asking you to do 50 things, 50 tasks, you can't fully complete them in a reasonable time because you're not focused on one task. And that's how I view AT&T. AT&T is trying to get these Nokia to Ericsson conversions done. So that's a focus. They're trying to scale and accelerate the build out of fiber. So that's another focus, while they're still trying to deploy the current midband asset that they have, the DoD. That's another focus. And then eventually there's going to be some 4.9 that they're going to have to deploy. That's another project which is going to take focus, while they're still trying to do everything else that they have going on. So it's not clear cut and dry for AT&T. They don't have a core focus right now at this point in time. T-Mobile, as an example, when they got started with the build out, it was 600, 2.5, boom, go and do it. That was it. They didn't really have any other focus. They were just spending and focused on that. And that's now at scale and continuing to grow. Now they've shifted a little bit from that because that was the focus. They're largely complete with everything they had planned. Now their focus is building out sites in rural America. That's the focus. So now they're spending and they're focused on that. By the end of the year, going into Q1 of 2026, they should be largely complete with that because they have to meet a FCC mandate. Then what are they going to focus on? They're probably going to focus more on fiber, but it's one thing at a time. It's not trying to do 60 things at once. And that's what it feels like AT&T is doing. They're trying to take on all of this build, and it's it's just a lot for not having all of your capex focused on wireless anymore. They're doing a hell of a lot. They're trying to get these 28,000 sites from Nokia over to Ericsson. That's a lot. Then they're trying to still get the mid-band deployment scale, the DoD portion of it. That's still a lot of work left. And then they're trying to modernize the entire network, which they're telling us they're going to do that through 2027. So AT&T has a lot on its plate. If we're looking at focus and everything else, right? Look at Verizon. Yes, they also did a rip from Nokia to Samsung. They quietly did that. That was a core focus, and then they hit the ground running with the mid band. And now today, they have it at scale. They're scaling more, but it's the only core focus. They're not trying to do all this other stuff, right? Now, when they get Frontier, that's probably going to change a little bit. But they're not trying to do 70 things at once, and that's where I always feel like AT&T is doing 70 things at once. And again, that's not taken away from their success. They're going to continue to grow. They're probably going to have to continue to have the lowest churn. But you're trying to do DoD. You're trying to do these rips. You're still deploying small cells today that are LTE only. So that's another focus that you have to shift. At some point, you have to get those small cells off of LTE and you have to move them on to 5G. Because if not, it's going to create a roller coaster experience. You're going to be on SA, 5G, you're going to drive, then you're going to hit those small cells, and then boom, you're going to drop all the way down to LTE. That's an inconsistent experience. You're going to have to get those small cells eventually on C-band, DoD, whichever you prefer, maybe both if the space allows for it. And you're going to have to get them onto the 5G core. At some point, they have to do it. But when are they going to do all of this? 2025 is done. That's supposedly the peak year of spending. They just released an article that they only have 24,000 sites today that they're going to increase the DoD bandwidth. And the peak year is almost done. So how much more are they going to spend in 2026? Are they going to do 10,000 more DoD sites? Maybe 20,000? Can they only do additional 5,000? We don't know. This year was the peak year. Have things internally shifted and completely changed? That's very likely. It's very likely that AT&T makes change of strategy and a huge push for wireless is coming again in 2026. It's very possible. But they have yet to complete a majority of any tasks that they wanted to do. There's still areas, I'm told, that need a lot of attention in regards to Nokia going to Ericsson. Some markets are 40%, 50%, 60% complete. They're going to have to continue to invest in that. That takes away from the focus to something else. So again, AT&T is going to remain successful. You guys will see the increase, right? But don't sit here and think that they're all of a sudden going to catch Verizon and T-Mobile in a year's time with this mid-band deployment. It's not going to happen, right? Just speaking on it from a competitive network perspective, it's just not going to happen. It's not, right? Once 2026 finishes and we go into 2027, then we'll probably see a lot more continuous mid-band deployment from AT&T along interstates and highways. We'll see more of that SA core in action. Because today, even I've been told there's a lot of mid-band sites that don't even have SA turned on. So that tells me the team is not in sync. They're not. There's some that just don't care about their jobs as much as others. So that's a problem in itself. But that's an internal AT&T thing that they have to get fixed. So we'll see what happens. AT&T will continue to invest, right? But the amount of money that AT&T has been investing for years now, the 20 billion, 21, 22, this year was what, 24 billion. AT&T is not really the master of none, right? It's like jack of all trades, master of none. They're doing too many things. They're investing into fiber, which is a great product, but they want to continue to grow the penetration of that. So that's going to take a huge focus. Wireless, too many things that are not completed. Too many projects going on all at once. I would have did the Ericsson thing once the mid-band deployment, right, was at a bigger scale. But then again, you needed to get the Nokia equipment out. So I understand both sides, right? There's people complaining that there's not enough mid-band. Then at the very beginning, for a long time now, people have been complaining that the Nokia equipment sucks. So it puts AT&T in a tough spot. But for the company's sake, the balance sheet, everything, they did the right move. They got a better deal through the Ericsson OEM, and that's who they're going to do ORAN with. And I'm hoping that's going to be a long partnership. I hope we don't have to witness another rip and replace for AT&T during this decade. But AT&T is fine, right? Don't get me wrong. AT&T is fine. They're going to continue to grow. The convergence is working, but they have a lot of unfinished projects, and their focus is all over the place. That's just what I wanted to say in this video. Let me know your thoughts. Like, share, subscribe. See y'all in the next one. Peace.